Our next speaker is one of our new authors, but she's already been doing a lot. She spoke at our UFO conference in April. So we've got her on the road, and she's beginning to do a lot of work. Sherry Wilde, her book has been out. It's been out for a while now.
Since December.
Since December?
Uh-huh.
It's been out since December. It's called The Forgotten Promise. And it has to do with her experiences with the ETs and UFOs since she was a child. And she's going to be talking about it, how she had to go through the fear to get to what it's really all about. And that's what I like, but that's what I find in my work. Mm-hmm. I don't find negativity. It's always positive. That's why I wanted to publish that book.
I know. Uh-huh.
Okay, so Sherry Wilde.
Thank you. Cherokee, can I close this laptop? No? Okay. Okay, okay. So I just have some notes to keep me on track because I've only got an hour and it takes a lot longer than that to tell my story. So I'm going to skim it and keep in the most important parts, but try to hit the things that are important to know. So my experiences have gone on my entire life, but I was not aware of them until 1988. 1988 is the year that I was regressed. The Center for UFO Studies came in to investigate a rash of UFO sightings in my community. And, pardon me? Okay, thank you. And thanks, you guys are great. So they came in to investigate these UFO sightings, and it was right at that time that I had started to become obsessed with a memory that I had. When I was 17 years old, pretty much 20 years previous to this time, so 1968, I was 17, and I was driving to my girlfriend's house, and we had made a plan. Back then, we didn't have cell phones, so you had to have plans. And I was supposed to be there by 10 o'clock. If I wasn't there by 10 o'clock, she was going to leave without me and go shopping. I was able to get off work at the last minute, and so I headed over to her house. And on the way there, somehow my car had stalled, just driving along at 60 miles an hour, and it had just cut out. It had stopped running. There were 4 men standing by the side of the road, and my car stalled. I didn't know anything until I walked into my girlfriend, to Vicky's house, and it was straight up noon. She was still there. She was running around like a crazy woman. The cows had gotten out. She yelled at me and said, "You're lucky that we didn't leave you." But the cows got out, and it took us this long to get them back in. And she remembered that. And I remembered that. And I knew that I'd had the 2 hours of missing time, but I never thought anything of it until 1988, when I became obsessed with finding out what had happened to me. I don't know what bothered me more. The idea that something traumatic could have happened to me at the age of 17 when my car stalled and those 4 men were by the side of the road, or the fact that for 20 years I hadn't even bothered to look at that. I thought, what kind of person does that? Once the idea came into my head, I became obsessed with it. I was looking for a hypnotist, and I was having trouble finding anyone locally that I felt comfortable who could regress me to tap into those memories. So when the Center for UFO Studies came to my community to investigate these UFO sightings, Vicky, still my best friend all these years later, called me and said, "They're having a press conference, and let's go to it. Let's see what they have to say." And I said, "I'm not interested. I have no interest in UFOs." And she said, "Oh, you of all people, you should be interested in going to this." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, because you've had sightings, you've seen UFOs." And I said, "I have not seen UFOs." And she said, "Well, you should go because it said in the paper that that they're looking for people who have had lost time, missing time. And if they've seen a UFO and then had missing time, they want to talk to them. And I said, why? Why? And she said, well, because they believe that those people might have been kidnapped by the aliens and taken aboard the ship, and they want to hypnotize them and find out what happened to them. And I said, Vicki, did you just hear what you said? What is wrong with you? I said, that doesn't happen. I said, this is America. That doesn't. That's who I was then. And that's what I said. And I said, besides, I said, God would never allow that. I said, Vicki, I said, that does not happen. She said, well, it was in the paper. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go, but I'm only going to go because I'll bet these people from Chicago know who a good hypnotist is. So I did go with her. And I'm going to skip over a lot of stuff, but the long story short is that eventually Don Schmitt, who is the same Don Schmitt who is now a specialist on Area 51 and Roswell, he was the lead investigator on my case. He was the co-director of the Center for UFO Studies out of Chicago at the time, and he's the one who came up to do the investigation and do the briefing. And he's the one I connected with. And it took him some months to convince me to allow them to be involved in my regression. I just wanted the name of the hypnotist. He wouldn't give it to me. He wanted to be involved because when he asked me, why do you want to be regressed, and I told him my story, he knew what the potential possibly could be. I didn't want him involved because I figured if they went looking for this thing that he called, this ridiculous thing they called alien abduction, that I might be led and that's what they would find. It turns out that it doesn't work that way, but it took him a long time to convince me that it doesn't work that way. And he gained my trust. He's a wonderful man, very compassionate, and he did not want me going into regression without support. I'm very grateful to him for that, because I walked in that day to be regressed by Stanley Mitchell, the best hypnotist in the world, probably the best hypnotist ever in that category, not in the category that Dolores does it, because I think she's the best. But he was more of a nuts and bolts kind of a hypnotist, and he developed battlefield hypnosis, and he was phenomenal. He was a great guy, and it took him a while to get my trust that day, and it took him a while to break through, but he did eventually break through. But you have to understand who I was. When I walked into that office that day down in Chicago, I was 37 years old. I was a successful businesswoman. I was living a really good life, and I was pretty confident. I was a very confident person. I knew how the world worked, and I knew that there was no such thing as alien abductions. I looked at Don Schmitt, very attractive man. He looked intelligent. I thought that he seemed educated. I didn't know why he would believe in something like this, but then I decided that he probably lived a pretty boring life. And he just needed something like this to spice it up, you know? So I apologized to Stanley Mitchell. I apologized to him. I apologized to the psychologist they had there. I said, you're not going to find anything. The worst we're going to find is that these 4 workers who were by the side of the road had traumatized me in some way. And yet, I had no injuries or damage to my body of any sort that indicated that I had ever been abused or anything had happened that day. So I wasn't sure what we were going to find. Probably nothing. Under hypnosis, and when you're under hypnosis, you are actually there. You know, my guys teach me that time doesn't exist, and they're right. When you're under hypnosis, time falls away, and you are literally back reliving what you are recalling. And Stanley Mitchell was able to get me back there, and I was definitely reliving this experience. My car rolled to a stop right in front of these men. One of them had stepped out into the road and was right in my lane of traffic and was standing there with his hand up. My car rolled to a stop right at his feet. And I thought, what a fool. what's he doing? I saw him there. The other two men were by the side of the road. They had wands, and they were pointing the wands at the ground. The other fourth guy was back there. He had a wand and was doing something. And it took me a while. I tried to look at the guy through my windshield, and he said my name. And he said, "Sherry, we've been waiting for you." And I just thought, how is that possible? I didn't even know I was coming over here until about 40 minutes ago. Who could be here that would know who I was and know that I was going to be coming down this road at this time? And I tried to look at him, and I couldn't get a fix on his face. I looked at the guys over by the side of the road, and I started to realize that they weren't human. They were all dressed alike in these coveralls. And I couldn't believe what my eyes were showing me. And I focused then at the guy who was talking to me. By now, he was saying to me, "Look at me, Sherry, look at me." And I did. I looked at him, and I immediately looked away because it was so frightening. And he had the features of a typical gray that we all are familiar with now. But at that time, I'd never seen or heard of such a thing. I put my hands on the steering wheel like this, and I put my head down, and I started to shake. I was shaking uncontrollably. And even though I was 17 years old, I was pretty sure I was going to die of a heart attack. My heart was pounding so hard in my chest. I had locked the doors. I'd managed to lock the doors before I put my hands across like that. And I had opened my eyes when I felt something brush up against me, and I saw what appeared like a claw coming in with 4 fingers, long fingers, and grayish tan skin. And it wrapped its fingers around this hand, this forearm, and then another hand came in and did the same thing here, and they pulled me out of the car. Once I was out of the car and standing there, once they had touched me and I was standing there and I was looking at the guy, the leader, the clear leader who had been talking to me, I was calm as could be. And I was taking it all in, and I was looking at that guy and I was going, he looks familiar to me. I was thinking that, and I was thinking, how does that big head get held up by that skinny, long neck? Doesn't seem, and I was like going like this looking, and I was looking for his ears, and then I was taking it all in. And then he said, "Sherry, there's work to be done." And he turned around and he starts marching off across the road, and I turned to see what's happening. A part of me knows. And the 2 guys on each side of me start walking, following him, and I see the ship. It's a beautiful little scout ship sitting in the field over there. And if you've seen the ships, probably many of you have, you know. If you're like me, you're in love with them. I just love the ships. And so I saw the ship there, and I just wanted to stop and just stand there and look at it. But they had business to do. They were dragging me across the field. And as we approached the ship, I see what appears to be a woman standing by the ramp. The ship is on the ground, and the ramp is down. And the leader guy, I'm going to accidentally call him by his name, so I'm just going to say his name is Da. I have since come to know him as Da, D-A. Da was already there, and they were dragging me along really fast. I was trying to walk with them, but I couldn't keep up with them. You know how they move? They move like time. Like there's no time, their time is different than ours, and so they move very quickly. There's no way I could walk and keep up with them, so you just give into it and let them drag you. And so we arrived there, and the woman standing by the ramp, and her name is Aurora, I've since come to know her name. She is always there, but she was there that day, and she assisted me up the ramp, and Da said, you know the routine. And I did. It was familiar to me. You go into the ship, and Aurora accompanied me into the one room. You go in, and first of all, the ship it looks to be about 30 feet in circumference, 20 or 30 feet in circumference. But when you go into the ship, it's always way bigger than what you think it's going to be. You think you have to squat down, and you think it's going to be real cramped. But you walk in there, and it's different because of the difference in our dimensions. And in the main room are the scout ships. The scout ships those ships are used primarily for the purposes that they had that day, which is the exam. So there's a table there, and a hallway that goes back to the rooms, the quarters. And to this side is the navigation room. And so she took me into the navigation room, and she proceeded to undress me. It's very cold in the ships. All of them are cold, really cold. And so I didn't like the idea of getting undressed in front of these little creatures. And besides, it's cold. But that's exactly what happened. And I got up on the table, and the exam proceeded to take place with Da. The other little guys were busy scurrying around. Aurora was placed at the top of the table and with her hands on my head to keep me calm. And everything was going along as is typical. They take samples, skin scrapings and different things, lots of examination of the body. And at one point he pulls down an instrument from above, and it's a syringe with a long needle on it. And I get hysterical, and Da looks up at me and says, "What's wrong?" And I say, "What are you going to do?" And he'd been telling me what he was doing as he was going along, and he had said he was going to harvest some of my eggs. And I said, "You can't do that. You can't have that." And he came up, and he came very close to me, and he said, "Why does this frighten you?" And I said, "Because I want to have children someday." And he said, "Oh, you still have children." And he explained to me how it works. They harvested the eggs, and I watched it go up through this container. I could see it go through, and the whole ship got really quiet. Everybody just froze. Da had turned around and was working at what looked like a small television back then, but now I understand is like a computer screen he was looking at. And he was doing some things on similar to like what a keyboard would be. And I had no clue what that was all about. And I was wondering why everybody was spooky quiet. The little guys who had been busy doing their tasks had gone back into the hallway. And they were looking at a monitor or a TV screen or looking through a window or something. And all of a sudden, Da turned around and he looks at me with all the love and gratitude in the world, and he says, "It is good." And the little guys got all excited. They didn't say anything or do anything, but I could feel them high-fiving each other. Hey, So whatever it was good. So I'm under hypnosis, and I'm reliving all this. And it's all detailed in my book. I guess I don't want to linger too much on all this, but under hypnosis, I was both terribly, terribly afraid, and then there was another part of me that was remembering that this was familiar to me. I asked him if I could go for a ride with him, if they could take me up in the ship again. There were indications that as I spoke those words under hypnosis, that I had been with these creatures before. There was a familiarity about it that I couldn't figure out. It baffled me. As we left the ship, well, right before we left the ship, I suppose I should tell you that when I'm with them, I always do this, or I did as a child and as a young adult. When I'm with them, back then I did anyhow, I would always beg them to let me stay with them. I didn't get that either under hypnosis, and I censored that. I don't think I said that to Don, but I would make a case for going with them. And I would say, "Do you know that these humans are like barbarians? They make up reasons to have wars and to kill each other." And I said, "Da, do you think that God makes a mistake? Because I'm pretty sure he made a mistake when he put me here. Because I don't feel like this is my home. I don't feel like I fit in. I don't understand them. They're hard to be around." And he would say, "You can't stay. You have to be here, and it's okay. It'll be okay." And I said, "I don't know. I don't think so. They're having wars. They're always having wars. They seem to enjoy killing each other." And he would look at me with all the sadness in the world and compassion, and he said, "It's okay. It'll be okay. We're always nearby." And I said, "Well, do you know that they kill animals just for sport?" I said, they just go out, they just kill animals, just for sport, just for the pleasure of killing. I said, what kind of creatures are these? How did I end up here? And I said, I don't think I belong here. And he said, you have to stay here, child. You have to stay here. And that baffled me. I had a lot of clues as to what this was really about, but my fear was so strong. My fear of them, the way they look, and the whole grab you and carry you, and the whole thing that it seemed to be against my will. So I couldn't put the pieces together for the longest time as to what was going on with me. I thought that I was the ultimate victim. After the hypnosis, I was sent home, but Stanley Mitchell had asked me, do you want to close the door or leave it open? And I said, what does that mean? And he said, if you close the door, the memory of this will go back in buried. You'll forget it. If you leave the door open, you're going to get more clarity, more understanding. And I thought, well, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose this. It felt icky to have a piece of my life, even if it's only just 2 hours to have it missing. So I said, leave the door open. And I also was hoping to get clarity so that I could unravel the story, so that I could somehow prove that it was just a fantasy, that it was a dream, that it wasn't real. So I felt if I left the door open, I'd have an opportunity to do that. And that was my agenda when I left Stanley Mitchell's office that day. The confident woman who walked in there is not who walked out. My life was shattered. The world as I knew it as a safe place was not safe anymore. I didn't know who I was. I couldn't imagine what this was about. I didn't know where to turn for answers. Don asked me not to talk to anyone or read anything, except I was allowed to talk to my friends, but I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody who knew anything about the subject. He wanted me untainted. They'd never had somebody who was so innocent about UFOs and UFO abductions and aliens and all that. So I went back home and I tried to live a life that was fairly normal, but I couldn't. Don stayed in my life and they continued to have a few more regression episodes, but the men in black came calling and they put an end to that. So he wasn't able to regress me anymore. So there was a lot of fear in my life for many years. So the memories were coming clearer, and I was working hard to unravel the story, to make it not real. I wanted my old life back. I was having a good life, and I resented the fact that these aliens came in and blew it all to smithereens, and I wasn't going to accept it easily. The center had me analyzed by a psychologist, long, lengthy analysis, and Don thought I would be happy when he told me that if there was some way to cheat on that exam, Sherry, we would accuse you of cheating because you're that mentally, psychologically balanced. And I burst into tears, and he didn't know what to do with me. I had wanted a diagnosis that I was insane. It would have been easier for me to deal with insanity and be treated than to deal with the fact that I was being kidnapped by aliens, or had been kidnapped by aliens. I went off to 3 or 4, 5 or 6, maybe 8, okay, psychologists to try to get a diagnosis. I was on a mission. I figured that I was probably paranoid, schizophrenic, delusional, and fantasy prone. I just needed a doctor to put his approval on that diagnosis, tell me and to agree with me on that, but none of them would. So I quit going. And then something happened that I was totally unprepared for. I started getting memories and flashbacks of other encounters. And they were coming fast and furious, and they were exploding in my mind. And I couldn't believe it, all the things that had happened to me that I had done, just like the episode when I was 17, I had just turned away and not looked at it. I mean, I had a lot of shame about some of that. There were some big things that had happened in my life, and I just never even questioned it. Never looked at it. The marks on my body, an 8-hour abduction one day, all kinds of things. all kinds of times when I had disappeared. I was struggling to come to terms with that when I came to the realization that I was being abducted in real time. This was 1988. They were coming for me, and I couldn't deny it any longer. The fingerprints were on my arms, my forearms, almost constantly. I was aware of it. They were teaching me things. I was spending so much time with them, there was no denying it. And they were unrelenting, 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times a week. A lot of the encounters were during the day. And I know that the reason they do that is because it's less fearful for me, but because I had to spend so much time for them, they were coming at night. Every Friday night, like clockwork. Every Friday night, you could count on them. You know how hard it is to go to bed when you know that an alien is coming for you? I was at the end of my rope when I got even worse news, and that was that they were taking my daughter. That's when things got really tough, and everything went to hell in a handbasket. I was angry, and I had it out with Da, and I insisted that he leave us alone, leave my daughter alone. I bargained, I did everything I could. There were rough days. I went through a lot of fear. And there came a time when Da said to me, one day when I was sitting on the steps, and I had dropped my head into my hands. I had tried killing myself. They wouldn't let me. They wouldn't let me kill myself. I thought if I killed myself that it would keep my daughter safe. And I heard him say to me, "Sherry, what can we do for you?" And my head popped up, and I said, "What?" And he said, "What can we do to comfort you?" And I thought, what is this? This is something new. And so I asked, and I said, I thought about it for a while, and I asked them to show themselves to my meditation group, my support group, people who had been giving me the support that I needed. And when they did show themselves to each and every one of those people, and my best friend Vicki also, it meant the world to me, and it changed everything. And I started to look at things differently. And I thought about the things they were teaching me. They taught me how to be a light reader. And I thought, why would they teach me to be a light reader? That is to read the vibration of people. Because they told me that the earth was going to be going through some changes, and that Gaia was going to be moving into the higher vibrations, the higher frequencies, and only those on her who resonated with that frequency would be going with her. Those who did not would be taken to another planet, another 3-dimensional planet, to continue on their journey. And he said, there's no judgment in this, Sherry. All will get there eventually. There's no judgment. They talked about the Creator all the time. They taught me the 3 important things to know. The number 1 of which is we are all one with our Creator. He would get frustrated almost. They don't really show that, but there were times when I would sense that he was somewhat frustrated with humanity, that we couldn't just get that we are all one with our Creator. And they started teaching me that when I was really little. And then they would give me examples and downloads. So I started to reflect on the things they had taught me. And I wondered how it is that they could be evil. How is it that they could be the malevolent people that the investigators believed them to be and were telling me. And that was the story everywhere I went. When Don was done investigating me, I went off to conferences. I tried to read some books, and I still don't read books to this day. I don't want to taint my own awareness and my own level of knowingness that I have with my guys. So it was a long journey. And in 1990, or end of 89, they stopped coming around. That series of abductions, as you want to call them, or encounters, what I call them, had subsided. And I was really, really grateful for a little while. Then I found myself missing them. I thought that was really sick. I had been begging them to leave me alone, leave my child alone. And when they did, I missed them. I didn't understand that. Excuse me one second. So I called out to him. I sent a message out, and I felt abandoned. And that's when I looked at the Stockholm Syndrome thing for a while. I thought maybe that's what was going on with me. Somebody had mentioned it to me, and so I looked at that. But no, I had decided that they were benevolent. It was just my fear of the way they looked. It was my fear that I'd been programmed to respond to them in a fearful way, because having them come in the middle of the night, especially when I was a young child, it was frightening. They're scary looking, unfortunately. So it was just a visceral type response to them. The truth of it is that when I was with them, they're so loving, they're so benevolent, they're so gentle, and it's where I would choose to be. For 20 years, I was left alone. It was their gift to me. I had wanted to have a normal life, and they gave me that. For 20 years, I didn't have anything. By then, my marriage was over. It didn't stand up under the strain of the abductions. And I lived a good life, and it was a lot of fun. Climbed a lot of mountains and experienced a lot of experiences. And I would reflect back on these things every now and then, think about my guys, and think, that was an interesting part of my life, but it was in the past. And then in 2009, I came awake in the middle of the night, and guess who was there? Yeah, Da was there. And I was happy to see him, but I was surprised. And I said, "What are you doing back here?" And he seemed insulted. And he said, "I told you about the earth changes that were going to be occurring. We're into the thick of it now. There's work to be done." And I said, "Oh." I said, "Do I get to do that light reading thing?" And he said, "You already did it." And I said, "I already did it? I don't remember that." And he said, "You did." And I said, "I hate when you do that." I said, "I don't remember it." And he dropped the information into my head, like they do. That's how they teach. They teach by downloading. And he dropped a big download into my mind that almost killed me. He seemed to be amused by it. I remember his eyes sparkling as he did it. And he immediately pulled it back out, but it was awesome. If only I could have hung on to it. And there's not, in this dimension, there's no way to do that. So he pulled it back out, and then he said, "In terms that you will understand, time as you know it was suspended for 3 days and 3 nights." And he gave me the date, and I'm sorry, I don't know it for sure, but people want to know, and I think it was November 9th of 2009, but I'm not sure. And he said, time was suspended for 3 days and 3 nights, as every soul was asked, did they want to go with Gaia, or did they want to stay in a 3-dimensional experience? And those who were close to the line were assisted by myself and other light readers. What we wanted to do was encourage those who were close to the line. We wanted to encourage them to make a dash for it, to go for it. It was still our hope that we would reach the 100th monkey, reach critical mass, and that would have the result of pulling all up. And that's what we were looking for. We were amazed in 2009 that humanity had come as far as they had come. All of your star family is in awe and amazement. Your cosmic family that is out there waiting for you could not be more happy. The harmonic convergence in 1987 had more of an impact than what we realized it was going to. I got my marching orders that August. I didn't know that's what it was, but I remember not being able to go into work and going off into the woods for 2 days and having some kind of a sacred communication with someone and saying, I'm ready. I'm ready. And it was very soon after that that I awakened to my abduction experiences. My part in this is to be a volunteer. Like many of us, all of us, chose to come here at this time. We're all here. We all have our marching orders. Everyone is here for the same purpose, to awaken. Myself and millions of other volunteers chose to come here when Gaia put out the call in your linear time of 1945, after the atomic blast. And she made the decision she was no longer going to hold back her evolution for her children. And so the call went out. I jumped on it. I was not in form. I had never been in form, but I had seen the children of Earth, and it looked really, really interesting. It's not easy to get onto planet Earth. It's a very difficult planet to be born onto. But when the call went out and they were going to bring in more souls, I volunteered. I knew I had to go. My love for Gaia was so deep. Can't tell you how much I love her. Absolutely amazing. My first part of my volunteer work was to be in the hybrid program. So that meant that they would be picking me up and extracting ova from me. Before I came, I told Da, don't let me get lost behind that veil. I see it happens to many souls that go on to that planet. They get hypnotized. They start to believe that they are separate, that they are a body. They forget the truth of who they are. It's very hypnotic being here. It's an interesting place. You live these short little lives, and they're filled with drama and pain and highs and lows, but you're not connected to your Creator. So there's a sense of homesickness. There's a longing in all of us to have that connection. And I felt it terribly. So my guides came around as much as they could to keep me connected to the truth of who I was, because that's the vow that they took on their end. So the hybrid program was put into place because on the timeline that I came in on, I volunteered in linear time 1947. There's training and there's work to be done. You set up, you prepare for this. You don't just get in a line, and when it's your turn, you get up to the counter like at McDonald's, and then you jump into the next available body. That's not how it works. So there was preparation. I had certain experiences I wanted to experience and certain things I wanted to do. So I was born on Christmas Day, 1950. I chose that time, like we all do. Choose our time and date, our place, our parents. We choose everything. That was the perfect energy stream for me to come in on. And I also liked it because it was the day that you honored Jesus' birthday. He's like a brother, you know. He's there working to assist, to make this all happen. He's been there all along. So I did it to honor him. So I came in to be part of the hybrid program because in 1950, humanity wasn't going to make it. And we knew it. We wanted the human DNA to continue on another planet. We would seed it onto another planet that was three-dimensional, and the human race would continue in their evolution. Now, there are souls and there are bodies, okay? So don't confuse them. The souls inhabit the bodies. We were concerned with the DNA of the body, which correlates to the home of the soul when it's on the planet having the experience. And we didn't want to lose the human race, the Earth human race. So that's why that plan was put into effect. The planet had been cleansed in the past when there had been attempts for the humanity, for the children of Earth to awaken, but they hadn't made it. There'd been glitches, there'd been failures, there'd been hijackings, there'd been reasons why it just didn't happen. And it didn't look like it was going to happen this time. The timeline showed that the planet would be destroyed again through flooding, water, cleansed, and she would ascend without her children. By the time 2009 had come around, the story had changed. The hybrid program was coming to a close, although there are other reasons other than that. But as far as my participation in it, it was done, plus of my age. But the need for it was not as strong. So now the focus turned to how can we best serve humanity and help them to awaken, come into the fullness of who they are, rejoin their cosmic family. You were not meant to live these short little lives in pain and in misery and separate from your Creator. But how to do that? So it was determined that I would write this book, and I would do my little part over here in my little corner of the world and touch as many people as I can, because the idea of alien abductions is an intriguing one, and it gets people's attention. And once you have their attention, you can say to them, I don't care if you don't believe me, because I don't. It's not about the alien abduction. That's not what this is about. It's about you questioning what it is that you do believe in. What do you believe? You didn't come from the stars? Okay, that's fine. You don't believe that there's life out there? That's okay. What do you believe? I just want to get people to look within and find their own truth. I don't try to convince anyone that my stories are real. It doesn't matter to me if anyone has any interest in believing any of my stories. They're just stories. We all have stories. What I'm interested in is getting people to say, who's the truth of where do I come from? What's the truth of my beingness? And to start living life differently. We're very distracted in this world. There's a reason why we're distracted in this world. There are those who would not want you to awaken. This is a world of duality. Our minds are split. Okay? Almost all of us live under the guidance of our small, egoic, fear-based self, little self. That's the voice we listen to. That's our guidance. We never stop still long enough to step into alignment with Spirit, as Eckhart Tolle says, into the now moment. When you're in the now moment, time does not exist. Time is one of those strange things that you have in the third dimension and the fourth dimension. Time, it doesn't exist. So if you step into the now moment, you are in alignment with Spirit. If you're in time, if you're in the past, your thoughts are in the past, or your thoughts are in the future, you're in fear. And you're under the control of your ego. We want people to understand that you need to align with Spirit, reconnect with your source, and re-identify the truth of who you are. We are all one with our Creator. Number one most important thing to know. And it is. We have family out there, in the cosmos, and they are waiting for our return. They have been waiting for our return, and they have been watching and cheering you on for so long, and they love you without condition. They are working to keep us safe and to help us break free of those that have enslaved the planet. Many people don't even know that they're enslaved. When you're born in a prison, I guess that you don't know that you're in a prison. But this is a planet of slavery. Yes, it's a beautiful planet. It's a wonderful place to be. But when you can't live in the light and live the truth of who you are, which is an eternal being, and you're not eternal beings, except at your core. You have a body that gets sick, diseased, it dies. You're distracted by having to make enough money, little slips of paper so you can keep shelter and food on the table. It's not how your Creator wanted you to live. It's not your real world. Planet Earth is your real world, but what she's become is not your real world. It's not your reality. So if God didn't create this world, if our Creator didn't create this world, who created it? Our fear-based ego selves created this world and continues to create it through the collective consciousness of all of us. So what does that mean? That means that we're all giving consent. Every second of every day, we are consenting to live in a world that is founded on fear, feeds on fear, thrives on fear, and therefore doesn't go anywhere. Just continually cycles through pain. So we want you to know that there's another way, a much better way. The truth is that you can live in the light. You can be eternal beings. You can keep your connection to Source. You were created to be co-creators. That's what you originally came to planet Earth to do. A three-dimensional planet is a planet where God extends himself out, and it is the first awakening of consciousness. And you have this awareness of your connection to Source and that you are a co-creator with Source. And you use your free will to create. You can create universes. That's absolutely true. When you are in the light, when you are in the truth of who you are. But your free will has been hijacked. It's been hijacked. Your mind is split. Your beautiful 12-strand DNA that you were granted and given when you came on to this planet originally has been stripped down to a double helix. And that is why we're learning that now, as we move into the fifth dimension, we will be regaining that. We will be opening that back up. We will be coming into the light. We will be reconnecting with Source. The scientists tell us that 97% of our DNA is junk. That's the DNA that was shut off. That's how much of yourself that you're missing. Can you imagine? You're missing 97% of your ability to be, the fullness and the richness of who you are meant to be, who you were created to be. When you fall into fear, fear is the densest vibration there is, the lowest. This world, unless you experience something other than it, and you can through meditation, prayer, but you have no idea how closed down, narrow, small, and dark it is. So we're moving toward the light, and all will get there eventually. So it's your decision on if you want to do it now or later. You can continue to play the game of karma, recycle yourself, although it won't be on planet Earth. I actually believe, from what the last information that I got was, that karma was done. That's what they told me. Karma was over because Earth is over. Earth was the only planet that had karma. It's a game made up by your ego to keep you trapped here. You don't have lessons to learn? You don't have lessons to learn. You're already perfect. You just have to remember that. It's silly to think that you have to work your way back to God. You are God. You just have to wake up and remember that. So karma's over. So if you're choosing to stay in a three-dimensional space, vibrationally, that's fine. There are three-dimensional planets. But we're moving up through the fourth right now, on our way to the fifth. And because you're here at this convention, tells me that each and every one of you is certainly going to make it up through to the fifth dimension and higher. But there are those out there that are still unaware. It's not our job to go out there and start waking people up, but it is our job to raise our own consciousness and live the truth of who we are. And now that you know the truth of who you are, and you do through this convention, and because you're here, it tells me that you're living it, you're committed to it. When people ask me what's the best way to go about this, there's a lot of different ways. Raise your vibration. Well, how do you raise your vibration? Release fear. Go on to Anelia Ben's Ascension 101 site and do her fear release exercise. You have to release fear. You cannot ascend. You cannot go any higher if you are carrying any fear. You can't. That's negative. That's because where we're going, we create instantaneously. And if you're coming from a place of fear, you can see what would happen. It doesn't compute. It's not going to work. The other thing to do that I recommend always, and is the way that I live my life, that I highly, strongly recommend, is to live in a state of surrender. Surrender does not mean giving in and waving a white flag. It means yielding to something, another way of looking at it, another choice. I think of it as affirming the innocence that's within you. Affirming, let me think if I can see how I say how I did this. Affirming your innocence is the only word wait a second. I have affirming your invulnerability. There's the word I was looking for. It affirms your invulnerability when you surrender. Because we were created invulnerable. Nothing can really hurt us. This world is a world of defensiveness. We come into the world and we immediately start to defend, right? That's because of our guilt. We all have all this guilt. But if you live in a state of surrender, the guilt goes away. You align yourself with Spirit every morning by saying a prayer, asking Spirit to guide you, to help you this day, help you choose the words, show you where to go, make every decision for you. You're not giving your power over to someone else. That's not someone who's outside of you. That's your higher self. That's God. That's you. That's the better part of you. That's your spirit. That's the truth of who you are. You're not giving over power to someone else. You are affirming the power within you. And you're telling your ego to hit the road. You're not going to listen to it anymore. And it becomes a practice. And what happens is your trust builds, because the Course in Miracles says that as soon as you do your prayer of surrender, all the angels of heaven come to assist you. And I will vouch to that as true. Because another soul has taken the small light that's barely flickering and said, I want it to be to the truth of who I am. And your flame grows. And they will assist you. And miracles will begin to show up. And you don't have to worry anymore. And you don't have to have fear. And you don't have to have any concerns, because you will learn through trust that you are taken care of. And that's how we're going to make our way back home. And here comes Dolores. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Made me cry.